The champagne flute trembled in my hand as Margaret's voice carried through the French doors of her Southampton estate. I'd stepped out onto the terrace for a moment of peace during her elaborate garden party, but fate had other plans. "Don't worry, darling," she cooed to someone inside. "Victoria is just temporary, a placeholder until you find someone more suitable." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My husband's response froze my blood. "I know, Mother. The prenup ensures she won't get anything substantial. Another year, maybe 2, and I'll find someone from our circle, someone who actually belongs." The crystal slipped from my fingers, shattering on the limestone terrace. 7 years of marriage reduced to a business arrangement. 7 years of what I thought was love revealed as nothing more than a calculated performance. I am Victoria Chen Blackwood, though apparently the Blackwood part was never meant to be permanent. At 34, I'd built my life around what I believed was a genuine partnership: Harvard MBA, successful career in investment banking, and what I thought was a loving marriage to Christopher Blackwood, heir to the Blackwood pharmaceutical empire. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd walked away from my own family's fortune to prove I could succeed on merit alone. My parents, tech entrepreneurs who'd built their empire from nothing, had taught me the value of authenticity. Never pretend to be something you're not, my mother used to say. But never let anyone make you feel like you're not enough. Standing on that terrace, listening to my husband and mother-in-law discuss my expiration date, I realized I'd been the only authentic person in this marriage. "Should I start introducing him to the Pemberton girl?" Margaret continued. "Her family's shipping fortune would complement our pharmaceutical holdings beautifully." "Not yet," Christopher replied. "Victoria's still useful. She's handling the Singapore expansion brilliantly. Once that's complete," he let the sentence hang, but I understood. Once I'd served my purpose, I'd be discarded like yesterday's newspaper. The shattered glass at my feet sparkled in the afternoon sun, each fragment reflecting a different memory. Our wedding in Tuscany, where he'd promised to love me forever. The midnight conversations about building an empire together. The way he held me after my miscarriage last year, whispering that we had all the time in the world. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. All of it, apparently, had been a performance worthy of an Oscar. I bent to collect the larger pieces of glass, my mind racing through options. Confront them? Pretend I'd heard nothing? The calculating part of my brain, the part that had orchestrated billion-dollar mergers, was already working through the implications. The prenup. Of course, Christopher had insisted on it, claiming it was family tradition. I'd signed it willingly, even adding clauses that favored him, because I'd been so certain our love was real. The fool's gold of my naivety mocked me now. But there was something Christopher didn't know, something his blue-blood arrogance had made him overlook. In his world of inherited wealth and social pedigree, he'd never bothered to truly investigate where I came from. He knew I'd worked in investment banking, knew I'd graduated from Harvard, knew I'd walked away from my family's modest tech business. What he didn't know was that the modest tech business was Chen Technologies, a company I'd quietly built through shell corporations and silent partnerships. What he didn't know was that his wife, the temporary placeholder, was worth 3 times his family fortune. "Victoria, are you out here?" Christopher's voice cut through my thoughts. I straightened, quickly wrapping the glass shards in my handkerchief. Years of boardroom negotiations had taught me to school my features into neutrality. When I turned, my smile was perfect. "Just needed some air," I said, meeting his blue eyes. Those eyes I'd once found so mesmerizing now seemed as cold as winter steel. "Your mother's parties can be overwhelming." He crossed the terrace in 3 strides, his Tom Ford suit impeccable as always. "You've been gone for 20 minutes. Mother's asking for you. The Weatherby's want to hear about your Singapore project." "Your Singapore project, not ours. Never ours." "Of course." I moved past him, but he caught my arm. "You're bleeding." I looked down at my palm, where a small cut had appeared. I hadn't even felt it. "It's nothing." I dropped my glass. His brow furrowed with what looked like concern. Another performance, I realized. How many times had I mistaken his acting for genuine emotion? "Let me see." He took my hand, examining the cut with the same clinical detachment his family probably used when reviewing pharmaceutical trials. "You should clean this. I'll stop by the powder room." I withdrew my hand, noting how he immediately wiped his fingers on his pocket square, as if my blood was contaminating. We walked back through the French doors together, the perfect couple returning to the party. Margaret stood near the marble fireplace, holding court among a circle of society matrons. Her eyes found us immediately, and her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "There you are, Victoria. I was just telling Mrs. Weatherby about your little project in Singapore. How industrious of you to keep working despite being a Blackwood now." Despite being a Blackwood. As if the name should have been enough to sustain me. As if I should have been content to be decorative. "The Singapore expansion will increase Blackwood Pharmaceutical's Asian market share by 40%, I replied smoothly. "The initial projections suggest—" "Please," Margaret interrupted with a tinkling laugh. "Let's not bore everyone with business talk. This is a garden party, not a board meeting." The other women tittered obligingly, but I caught something in Mrs. Weatherby's expression. A flicker of interest, quickly suppressed. I filed it away for later consideration. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of small talk and smaller minds. I played my part perfectly. The devoted wife, the accomplished but not too accomplished daughter-in-law, the temporary fixture in the Blackwood family tableau. But behind my practiced smile, my mind was building something else entirely. A plan. A reckoning. A way to make my temporary status very, very permanent. Just not in the way they expected. Christopher's hand rested on the small of my back as we made our rounds. A gesture that once made me feel cherished. Now it felt like a brand, marking property soon to be liquidated. I listened to him charm the Pemberton family, noting how his eyes lingered on their daughter. 23, fresh from Vassar, with the kind of pedigree Margaret would approve of. "Your wife is lovely," Mrs. Pemberton said, catching Christopher's wandering attention. "How long have you been married?" 7 years, I answered before he could, though it feels like yesterday. Christopher's hand tightened imperceptibly on my back. "Victoria likes to joke that I swept her off her feet." "No joke," I said, meeting his eyes. "You were very calculated in your pursuit." The word hung between us for a moment before he covered with a laugh. "She means determined." I knew what I wanted the moment I saw her. Yes, I thought. You wanted someone smart enough to help grow your empire, but too naive to realize she was temporary. Someone without the social connections to fight back when you discarded her. Someone you thought was beneath you. The party finally wound down as the sun set over the manicured lawns. Christopher and I made our goodbyes, Margaret air-kissing my cheeks with the same enthusiasm she might show a servant. "Drive safely," she said, though her eyes were solely on her son. "Christopher, darling, call me tomorrow. We have much to discuss about the Foundation Gala." The Foundation Gala, where no doubt the Pemberton girl would be formally introduced to eligible Blackwood heir. Our driver navigated the Hampton roads in silence while Christopher scrolled through his phone. I watched his profile in the dying light, cataloging the features I'd once memorized with love, the slight bump on his nose from a polo accident, the way his jaw clenched when he concentrated, the wedding ring he twisted absently, probably calculating how much longer he'd have to wear it. "The Singapore presentation is next week," I said, testing. He didn't look up. "I assume you have everything handled." "Actually, I've been thinking, maybe it's time I stepped back from Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, focused on other interests." That got his attention. His head snapped up, eyes sharp with alarm. "What? You can't. The board expects—" He caught himself, but I'd heard enough. "The board expects. Not I need you, or we're partners in this. Just corporate expectations. I'm tired, Christopher." The truth of it surprised me. Tired of fighting for a seat at a table I apparently don't belong at. His phone forgotten, he turned to face me fully. "Where is this coming from?" "Mother said something, didn't she? You know how she is, all old money pretensions. She doesn't mean anything by it." The lie came so easily to him, I wondered how many others I'd swallowed over the years. "Your mother's been perfectly clear about her feelings since day one," I said. "I'm just finally listening." We pulled up to our Manhattan penthouse, purchased with my bonuses though it was in his name. Another thing I'd agreed to out of love and trust. Another weapon he could use when the time came to dispose of me. The doorman greeted us with professional warmth. The elevator ride to the 40th floor was silent, heavy with unspoken calculations on both sides. Christopher was probably wondering how to keep me productive until he could execute his exit strategy. I was thinking about something else entirely. In our bedroom, decorated by his mother's designer in shades of gray and blue that had never felt like home, I began the delicate process of pretending everything was normal. 7 years of marriage had taught me his routines: cufflinks in the Hermes tray, watch on the charger, shoes in their designated spot in his color-coordinated closet. "Victoria," he caught my wrist as I passed. "Whatever you're thinking about leaving the company, don't. You're valuable to Blackwood Pharmaceuticals." Valuable, not valued. The distinction had never been clearer. "I know my worth," I said quietly. He mistook it for acquiescence, releasing my wrist with a satisfied nod. "Good. The Singapore expansion is too important to jeopardize with emotional decisions." Emotional decisions? As if discovering your marriage was a sham counted as mere emotion. I showered while he took calls in his study, letting the hot water wash away the last of my illusions. When I emerged, wrapped in the Turkish cotton robe he'd bought me for our anniversary, or rather had his assistant buy, my phone was buzzing with messages. 3 from my college roommate Sarah, now a partner at a major tech firm, 2 from my brother in Silicon Valley, 1 from a number I didn't recognize with a Singapore prefix. I opened the last one first. "Mrs. Blackwood, I hope this reaches you well. I represent a consortium of investors interested in discussing opportunities in the Asian pharmaceutical market. We understand you're the architect behind Blackwood's expansion. Would you be available for a confidential discussion?" Interesting timing. I screenshot the message before deleting it, then opened my laptop. The encrypted partition Christopher didn't know existed sprang to life with a password he'd never guess: my grandmother's maiden name combined with the date of my miscarriage. My real work waited inside. Years of careful documentation, financial records, recording of conversations he thought were private, a complete picture of Blackwood Pharmaceuticals' operations, including some creative accounting that would interest the SEC, but more importantly, my own empire, built quietly, carefully, through shells and subsidiaries, tech investments, real estate, pharmaceutical patents filed under holding companies, an empire that dwarfed the Blackwood legacy, hidden in plain sight from a man too arrogant to look beyond his own reflection. Christopher appeared in the doorway, already dressed for bed in his monogrammed pajamas. "Coming to bed? You know I can't sleep when you're working." Another lie. He slept perfectly well during my late nights. He just didn't like losing control of my schedule. 5 more minutes, I promised, closing the laptop, just finishing up some emails. He nodded, satisfied that his temporary wife was still playing her part. As he slid between the Egyptian cotton sheets, I opened my phone one last time. A new message waited. This one from a contact at the Wall Street Journal, following up on a tip about irregularities in pharmaceutical pricing. A tip I'd planted 3 months ago. Water waiting to bloom when the season was right. I deleted this message too, then joined my husband in bed. He curved around me automatically, a gesture born of habit rather than affection. His breathing evened out within minutes, secure in his certainty that his plan was unfolding perfectly. Let him sleep, I thought. Let him dream of Pemberton girls and advantageous mergers. Let him count his chickens before they hatched. Because Victoria Chen Blackwood had been many things in her 34 years: daughter, student, banker, wife, fool. But temporary? Never that. In the darkness I smiled. Tomorrow I would begin my performance, the devoted wife slowly pulling away, making his job easier. I would excel at the Singapore presentation, secure the expansion, add billions to Blackwood's value. I would be exactly what he expected, useful until I wasn't. What he wouldn't expect was what came after. The temporary wife who refused to be erased, the placeholder who'd been placing her own pieces on the board all along. The woman he'd married for convenience, who would teach him the true meaning of inconvenient. My phone buzzed once more. Sarah, unable to sleep on the West Coast. "Drinks Thursday. I have gossip about that startup you asked about." I typed back quickly. "Absolutely. I have some news of my own. News that would shake the Blackwood family tree right down to its blue-blooded roots. But that was for tomorrow. Tonight I lay beside my temporary husband and planned his permanent education in underestimating a Chen woman. After all, we had another year, maybe 2, according to his timeline. More than enough time to show him that some things, once set in motion, could never be made temporary again. The penthouse was silent, except for Christopher's steady breathing and the distant hum of Manhattan 40 floors below. But in that silence, I heard something else. The whisper of documents being filed, the click of pieces falling into place. The quiet roar of an empire built on authentic foundations rather than inherited pretensions. Margaret Blackwood thought I didn't belong in their circle. Christopher thought I was replaceable. They both thought I was temporary. They were about to learn that Victoria Chen had always been permanent. They just hadn't realized they were the ones on borrowed time. Tomorrow would begin the countdown, but tonight I savored the last moments of their ignorance. The last night they would sleep soundly, secure in their superiority. The last time they would ever underestimate a woman who'd heard too much and decided to make them hear her in return. Permanently. Thursday arrived with unseasonable warmth for October, the kind of Indian summer day that made Manhattan feel almost forgiving. I sat across from Sarah at Le Bernardin, watching her reaction as I laid out the last week's revelations. "The bastard," she breathed, setting down her wineglass with enough force to make the sommelier wince. 7 years, Vic. 7 fucking years of indoor voice, I reminded her, though I appreciated the fury on my behalf. Half of Christopher's business associates eat here. Good. Let them hear what kind of man they're dealing with. But she lowered her voice, leaning across the pristine white tablecloth. What's the plan? Please tell me there's a plan that ends with him living in a studio apartment in Jersey. I smiled, cutting into my Dover soul with surgical precision. Better. I'm going to give him exactly what he wants. Sarah's eyes narrowed. She knew me too well. Explain. He wants to replace me with someone more suitable. Fine. I'll make myself so indispensable first that when I leave, I take half his empire with me. I paused, savoring both the fish and the moment. The legal half, of course. The illegal half, well, that's what friends at the SEC are for. The startup I mentioned, Sarah said slowly, understanding dawning. You're not looking to invest, you're looking to acquire. Zenith Pharmaceuticals. They have 3 drugs in final trials that will revolutionize diabetes treatment. Blackwood's been trying to buy them for 2 years, but the founder won't sell to them. But he'll sell to Chen Technologies, to Victoria Chen, the woman who built her family's small tech company into a biotech empire while her husband wasn't paying attention. I smiled. He's already agreed to preliminary talks. Sarah lifted her glass in a mock toast. To underestimating brilliant women. May they choke on their assumptions. We clinked glasses just as my phone buzzed. Christopher, demanding to know where I was. I'd left the office after the Singapore presentation that morning, a flawless performance that had the board eating out of my hand. The expansion was approved, the contracts ready for signature. My last gift to Blackwood Pharmaceuticals before I burned it all down. Lunch meeting, I texted back. Home by 6. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before his response. Mother's coming for dinner. Wear the blue Chanel. The blue Chanel. The dress his mother had selected for me last Christmas, designed to make me look appropriately upper class while ensuring I never outshone her. I donated it to charity months ago, but he'd never noticed. I'll need to go shopping, I told Sarah. Something in blue, something memorable. Her grin was predatory. I know just the place. 2 hours later, I stood before our bedroom mirror in a blue dress that cost more than most people's cars. Not Chanel. Victor and Rolf, with an architectural silhouette that screamed power rather than whispered propriety, the kind of dress Margaret Blackwood would hate and Christopher would fear. Perfect, I murmured, adding diamond earrings I'd bought myself after closing my first $1 million deal, diamonds I'd never worn around the Blackwoods, playing the role of the woman satisfied with the modest jewelry her husband selected. The doorbell rang at precisely 7. Margaret never arrived early or late, controlling even time to suit her purposes. I heard Christopher greeting her, their voices carrying that particular tone of conspiracy that had become so familiar. Looking tired, Margaret was saying as I descended the stairs. The stress of pretending, no doubt. Mother, Christopher warned, but without conviction. Darling, I'm simply concerned. It can't be easy for her, trying to fit into our world. Some people are meant for certain circles, and others, well. I paused at the landing, letting them finish their little performance before making my entrance. When I did, the reaction was everything I'd hoped. Margaret's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, assessment, and finally, a kind of wary recognition. This wasn't the daughter-in-law she'd carefully molded. This was something else entirely. Margaret, I said warmly, descending the last few steps, how lovely you could join us. Victoria. Her eyes tracked over the dress, the diamonds, the confident set of my shoulders. That's quite a statement. You always said I should dress for the position I want, not the one I have. I smiled, kissing her powdered cheek. Shall we move to the dining room? I've had no bouqueter tonight. I know how you feel about my cooking. Another departure from script. Usually I'd cook myself, subjecting myself to her critiques about seasoning and presentation. Tonight I'd removed that weapon from her arsenal. Christopher's hand found my elbow as we walked. "What are you doing?" he hissed. "Having dinner with your mother," I replied pleasantly. "Isn't that what you wanted?" The meal began with Margaret's usual interrogation disguised as conversation. How was the Singapore project? Successful beyond projections. What did I think of the Pemberton girl? Young, impressionable, perfect for molding. Was I planning to attend the foundation gala? Wouldn't miss it for the world. "Speaking of the gala," Margaret said, setting down her sake cup with deliberate precision, "I've arranged for you to be seated at table 12. Table 12, the Siberia of charity galas, where wives who didn't quite measure up were quarantined with the new money and social climbers. I'd spent 3 years working my way up to table 4, only to be demoted again. How thoughtful, I said. Though I should mention, the Yamamoto family specifically requested I join their table. Something about the Singapore expansion opening doors for their electronics empire. Christopher's chopsticks paused midway to his mouth. The Yamamotos were old money, older than the Blackwoods, with influence that stretched across 3 continents. Their table was the crown jewel of the gala seating chart. "The Yamamotos?" Margaret's voice climbed half an octave. "How do you know the Yamamotos?" "Akiko and I were at Harvard together. We've kept in touch." Another carefully hoarded truth. Akiko Yamamoto had been my study partner, my confidante, and now my secret weapon. She's very interested in some biotech innovations I've been developing. "You've been developing?" Christopher set down his chopsticks entirely. "At Blackwood?" "Oh no," I said, reaching for my wine. "This is separate. A little project I've been working on in my spare time. Patent applications, small investments, nothing that would interfere with my duties as your wife." The last words came out with just enough edge to make him flinch. Margaret's eyes darted between us, sensing blood in the water. "Well," she said after a moment, "I suppose if the Yamamotos insist, they do." I smiled. In fact, Akiko mentioned they're considering pulling their investments from certain pharmaceutical companies. Something about ethical concerns and management issues. You know how principled old money can be. The threat hung in the air like a sword. The Yamamoto's investment in Blackwood Pharmaceuticals was significant enough that losing it would trigger a board panic. Christopher's face had gone pale beneath his tan. "Perhaps," Margaret said carefully, "we should discuss the seating arrangements later." "Perhaps we should." The rest of dinner passed in strained conversation. I played the perfect hostess, refilling glasses and directing the serving staff with an ease that clearly unsettled both Blackwoods. This wasn't the nervous girl who'd fumbled with fish forks at her first family dinner. This was someone who belonged at any table she chose to grace. As the evening wound down, Margaret made her move. "Christopher, darling, why don't you see about that wine we discussed? The Chateau de Kim. I'd like a moment with Victoria." He hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave us alone, but Margaret's tone brooked no argument. As his footsteps faded toward the wine cellar, she turned to me with a smile sharp as winter. "You've changed." "Have I?" I traced the rim of my glass with one finger. "Or am I just finally being myself? Don't be clever with me, girl. I know exactly what you are and where you come from. Christopher told me all about your little banking job, your middle-class family playing at entrepreneurship. You may have learned to dress better and speak properly, but breeding always tells." "Yes," I agreed. "It does." Something in my tone made her pause. She studied me more carefully, perhaps seeing for the first time the steel beneath the silk. "What are you planning?" "Planning?" I laughed, the sound crystalline in the dining room. "I'm doing exactly what you've always wanted, Margaret. I'm preparing to step aside, to let Christopher find someone more You're lying. Am I? Ask your son about our conversation last week. I told him I was thinking of leaving Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, focusing on other interests." I leaned back, the picture of casual confidence. After all, I wouldn't want to embarrass the family by staying where I don't belong. "The Singapore expansion is complete. Contracts signed, partnerships established, profits guaranteed for the next decade." I stood, smoothing my dress, my last gift to the Blackwood legacy before I fade into the background where you've always thought I belonged. Margaret rose too, her composure cracking. "If you think you can threaten this family—" "Threaten?" I moved toward the window, gazing out at the glittering cityscape. "I'm giving you what you want, a clear path to the Pemberton girl or whoever else you've selected. No messy divorce, No public scandal. Just a quiet separation and a generous settlement that keeps everyone's reputation intact. The prenup ensures I get very little. Yes, Christopher made sure of that. I turned back to her, smiling. Of course, prenups don't cover everything. They don't cover, for instance, intellectual property developed independently, or investments made through private channels, or connections cultivated outside the sacred Blackwood sphere. You're bluffing. The wine cellar door opened, and Christopher returned with a dusty bottle, oblivious to the tension crackling between us. Found it, he announced. The 67, Father always said. What's wrong? Nothing, Margaret said quickly. Victoria was just telling me about her plans to step back from the company. His eyes found mine, wary now. We discussed this. The board needs ensure the Singapore expansion runs smoothly. I'm not unreasonable, Christopher. I know my value to Blackwood Pharmaceuticals. Your value, Margaret repeated, the words bitter in her mouth. Precisely. I moved to Christopher's side, playing the devoted wife one more time. I know exactly what I'm worth. The question is, do you? The evening ended with the usual air kisses and empty promises to do this again soon. As Christopher walked his mother to the elevator, I heard her urgent whispers, caught his defensive responses. They were rattled. Good. I was clearing the table when he returned, his face a study in controlled fury. What the hell was that? Dinner with your mother. I thought it went well. Don't. He grabbed my wrist, not hard enough to bruise but firm enough to convey threat. Whatever game you're playing, stop. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I looked down at his hand on my wrist, then up at his face. Actually, Christopher, I know exactly who I'm dealing with. The question is, do you? He released me, stepping back as if burned. The Yamamotos. How long have you been in contact with them? Does it matter? I'm stepping back, remember? Focusing on other interests. Being the temporary wife you always intended me to be. I never said. No, you never said it to me. I met his gaze steadily. But walls are thin, Christopher. Voices carry. And some conversations, once overheard, can't be forgotten. The color drained from his face as understanding dawned. You heard. Every word. I began loading the dishwasher. Movements precise and calm. Temporary. Placeholder. Doesn't belong. Did I miss anything? Victoria. Oh, and the Pemberton girl. Can't forget about her. 23, fresh from Vassar, shipping fortune to complement your pharmaceutical empire. Your mother's already planning the merger. He stood frozen in the doorway, calculating. I could see the wheels turning, weighing damage control against outright denial. It wasn't what you think, he finally said. No? Then what was it, Christopher? Because from where I stood, it sounded like my husband of 7 years discussing my expiration date with his mother. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The family expects. The family. I laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut. Yes, let's talk about family. About expectations. About the pressure of living up to a legacy you did nothing to build. How dare you?
It's more complicated than that. He finally faced me, and I saw the truth written in every line of his face. The stress I'd attributed to market volatility. The late nights I'd thought were spent analyzing portfolios. The business trips that had gotten more frequent over the past year. How long? I asked. The gambling? 2 years. Maybe 3. He slumped in his chair. The debts started piling up about 18 months ago. Tony and his associates, they offered to help. Loans. To cover the losses, get me back on my feet. Loan sharks. The words tasted bitter. You borrowed from loan sharks. Investment partners with flexible terms, Marcus corrected weakly. But yes. Essentially. I thought about Castellano's calculated gaze, Veronica's sharp smile, the way everyone had studied me like a specimen. And tonight? They use the house sometimes. For games, meetings. It was part of the arrangement. He couldn't meet my eyes. You're never here on Thursdays. Hospital board meetings, remember? The board meetings I'd mentioned exactly once. 6 months ago. He'd been keeping track, planning around my schedule. How many times, Marcus? Does it matter? How many times have strangers been in my home? Our home, he corrected automatically, then winced at his own words. 15. Maybe 20. 20 times. 20 evenings when criminals had sat on my grandmother's furniture, touched my belongings, invaded my sanctuary. I felt physically ill. What else? Because there was always more. In the ER, the first symptom was never the whole story. Marcus returned to staring at his monitors. They want the house. What? As collateral. I've been stalling, making payments, but. He gestured helplessly at the screens showing red numbers, downward trends, failure in digital form. Tony's getting impatient. The house. I said it slowly, letting the weight of it sink in. Our house. My dream house. I'll fix this, Marcus said desperately. I just need time. One big win, the right investment. Stop. I was surprised by how calm I sounded. Inside, I was screaming. Just stop. I left him there, surrounded by his monitors and his delusions. In the kitchen, I mechanically unpacked the Thai food that had somehow survived being dropped. The smell turned my stomach. Everything in this room, the Viking range I'd special ordered, the marble countertops we'd selected together, the custom cabinets, all of it felt contaminated now. My phone rang. The hospital. Dr. Chen? Sorry to bother you, but we have a multi-vehicle accident coming in. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up, grateful for the excuse to leave. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Emma, we need to talk about this. No, I said, gathering my keys and hospital badge. We don't. Not tonight. Where are you going? To work. To my actual life. The one that doesn't involve loan sharks and secret gambling debts and strangers in my home. I paused at the door. Don't wait up. Emma, please. I left him standing there and drove toward the hospital, toward the familiar chaos of the ER where problems had solutions and I knew exactly who I was. But even as I merged onto the FDR drive, I couldn't shake the image of Castellano's calculating eyes or the sound of Veronica's laughter in my grandmother's house. The conference had been cancelled due to contamination. As it turned out, that wasn't the only thing in my life that had been contaminated. The poison had been spreading through my marriage for years, and I'd been too busy, too trusting, too blind to see it, but I saw it now. And as I pulled into the hospital parking garage, I made myself a promise. Marcus might have gambled away his life, but he wasn't taking mine with it. The question was, how much of it was already lost? The trauma bay erupted into controlled chaos as the first ambulances arrived. 3 vehicles, 7 victims, and enough adrenaline to temporarily erase the image of strangers in my living room. This was my domain, where I commanded respect and knew exactly what needed to be done. Dr. Chen, we've got a crush injury in trauma 2, Nurse Rodriguez called out. ETA 2 minutes. I snapped on gloves, the familiar ritual grounding me. Get ortho on standby. What's the status on the pediatric case? Stable, minor lacerations only. Dr. Williams has it covered. For the next 4 hours, I lost myself in the rhythm of emergency medicine. Sutures and assessments, x-rays and treatment plans. Here, problems had solutions. A broken bone could be set. A laceration could be stitched. Nothing like the gaping wound that had opened in my marriage. It wasn't until I was scrubbing out after the last patient that Sarah cornered me in the break room. You look like hell, she said without preamble, pushing a cup of coffee into my hands. And don't tell me it's because of the MBA. I've seen you handle worse without breaking a sweat. Sarah Martinez had been my closest friend since residency. We'd survived 100-hour weeks together, covered for each other during the worst shifts of our careers. If anyone would notice something was wrong, it would be her. The conference was cancelled, I said, taking a sip of the bitter hospital coffee. I know. You texted me, remember? She studied me with the same intensity she brought to difficult diagnoses. But that's not why you showed up here looking like someone died. What happened? I wanted to tell her. The words pressed against my teeth, desperate to escape. But saying it out loud would make it real, and I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Marcus and I had a fight, I said instead. Not a lie, exactly. Just not the whole truth. Sarah's expression softened. About what? You two never fight. That was the problem, wasn't it? We never fought because we were never together long enough to fight. I worked 60-hour weeks. He supposedly managed investments from home. We'd become expert at sliding past each other, 2 ships navigating the same waters but never actually meeting. It's complicated, I said. It always is. Sarah glanced at her watch. My shift ends in an hour. Want to grab that drink? Talk about it. Rain check. I stood, suddenly exhausted. I should head home. Deal with things. Sarah looked unconvinced but didn't push. That was one of the things I loved about her, she knew when to press and when to give space. Call me if you need anything. And Emma? Whatever it is, you don't have to handle it alone. But I did. Because how could I explain that my husband had turned our home into a gambling den? That we owed millions to people who looked at me like I was collateral damage? That everything I'd built, everything I'd trusted, was founded on lies. The drive home took longer than usual. I found myself taking detours, delaying the inevitable return to the brownstone that no longer felt like home. When I finally pulled into our street, I was relieved to see the strange cars were gone. The house looked normal from the outside, the same elegant facade, the same well-maintained garden. You'd never know it had been contaminated inside. Marcus was cleaning. The poker chips were gone, the furniture returned to its proper arrangement. He'd even lit the lavender candles I liked, as if aromatherapy could mask the stench of betrayal. "You're back," he said, pausing with a dish rag in hand. I was worried. "Were you?" I set my bag down carefully, noticing he'd scrubbed the spot where I'd dropped the Thai food. "Or were you worried I'd come back with the police?" He flinched. "Emma, please. Can we talk about this rationally?" "Rationally?" I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "You want to discuss owing $14 million to criminals rationally?" "They're not criminals," he protested weakly. "They're alternative lenders who use our home for illegal gambling. Gaming. Private gaming. It's different." "Is it?" I moved through the house, checking for signs of intrusion. Everything looked normal, but I knew better now. Did they go through our things? Our personal items? Marcus followed me from room to room. "No, of course not. They just used the common areas." In our bedroom, I noticed my jewelry box had been moved back to its original position. Almost perfect, but not quite. "You're lying." "I'm not," I spun to face him. My jewelry box was moved. Someone was in our bedroom. "Our bedroom, Marcus." His shoulders sagged. "Veronica wanted to use the bathroom. I told her to use the powder room, but she doesn't always listen." "Veronica." I tasted the name like poison. "Who is she, exactly?" "Tony's associate." "His girlfriend?" "It's complicated." Everything was complicated in Marcus's world, apparently. I opened my closet, checking my belongings. Nothing seemed to be missing, but the violation was there anyway. Strangers had been in my most private spaces. "I want them out," I said. "All of them. No more games, no more meetings, no more anything in this house." "I told you, I'm working on it. But these aren't people you just say no to, Emma." "Then we'll sell the house. Pay them what we can and start over somewhere else." Marcus's face went white. "We can't sell the house." "Why not?" He sat heavily on the bed, our bed, where we'd made love, shared dreams, built what I thought was a life together. "It's already leveraged. Second mortgage, home equity line of credit. All maxed out." The hits kept coming. I leaned against the doorframe, trying to process this new information. "How much is the house worth?" "In this market? Maybe 3 million. "And we owe? On the house itself?" "About 2.5. So even if we sold, we'd barely clear enough to make a dent in what you owe these people." "That's why I need time," Marcus said desperately. "I have a plan. There's a deal coming up, a sure thing." "Stop." I held up a hand. "Just stop saying, sure thing. Do you even hear yourself? You sound like every gambling addict I've ever treated. In the ER. I'm not an addict." The denial was automatic, reflexive. "No? Then what do you call someone who's destroyed their life chasing the next big win? Who's put their family in danger for the thrill of the game?" "It's not like that. I can stop anytime." "Then stop. Right now. No more gambling, no more deals. With Tony and his associates." "I told you, I owe them, then we'll figure out another way. Bankruptcy, payment plans, something legal." Marcus laughed bitterly. "You don't declare bankruptcy on people like Tony Castellano. And payment plans? What do you think this is, a credit card debt?" I sank into the chair by the window, the same chair where I used to read medical journals in the morning light. Everything in this room held memories, and now they were all tainted. "Who is he really?" I asked. "Tony Castellano." And don't say, alternative lender. Marcus was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. His family has been in the lending business for 3 generations. They're connected. Connected. You mean organized crime? I mean connected. They have interests in construction, shipping, various legitimate businesses. And illegitimate ones. I didn't know that when I started borrowing from them. He looked at me pleadingly. I thought they were just private investors with deep pockets. By the time I realized, it was too late. When did you realize? About 6 months ago. When they started insisting on using the house for their meetings. 6 months. 6 months of lying to me, of letting criminals into our home, of pretending everything was normal while our life crumbled around us. What else haven't you told me? I asked. He hesitated, and I knew there was more. There always was. Marcus. They've been asking about you, he admitted. Your schedule, your work, your assets. Ice formed in my veins. My assets? Your salary, your retirement accounts, your father's inheritance. My father had left me a modest sum when he died 5 years ago. I'd invested it conservatively, planning to use it for our children's education. The children we'd never gotten around to having because we were both too busy, too focused on our careers. How do they know about that? I had to provide financial statements when I borrowed the money. Full disclosure of all household assets. You gave them our financial information? My financial information? I didn't have a choice. You had a choice when you started gambling. You had a choice when you took their first loan. You had thousands of choices before we got to this point. I stood abruptly, needing to move, to do something with the rage building inside me. In the ER, I was trained to stay calm in any crisis. But this wasn't a medical emergency. This was my life imploding in slow motion. I need to see everything, I said. All the debts, all the contracts, every piece of paper you've signed. Emma, now. Marcus. If we're going to find a way out of this, I need to know exactly how deep we are. He led me back to his study, the inner sanctum I'd rarely entered during our marriage. The monitors still showed their red numbers, but now he pulled out files, folders, a laptop I'd never seen before. This is everything, he said, spreading papers across his desk. Every loan, every payment, every agreement. I put on my reading glasses and began reviewing the documents with the same attention I gave to complex medical charts. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd imagined. IT had started small, a few thousand here, a few thousand there. Personal loans at exorbitant interest rates. Then, as the losses mounted, larger sums. 50,000. 100,000. By the time he'd signed the first $1 million note, he was so deep that stopping would have meant immediate ruin. These interest rates, I said, calculator in hand. 30%? 40? This is insane. Welcome to alternative lending, Marcus said bitterly. And this clause here. I pointed to a paragraph in dense legalese. It says they can demand full payment at any time, for any reason. That's standard in these agreements. Standard for loan sharks, maybe. I kept reading, my horror growing with each page. Marcus, this one puts the house up as collateral. You signed this 8 months ago. I know. So when you said they want the house, they already have claim to it. They're just letting us live here for now. I set down the papers, removing my glasses to rub my eyes. The full scope of our situation was becoming clear, and it was catastrophic. We didn't just owe money we couldn't pay. We were trapped in a web of legal and illegal obligations that touched every aspect of our lives. We need a lawyer, I said. With what money? Everything we have is already spoken for. Then we need help. FBI, police, someone. And tell them what? That I willingly borrowed money from people I knew were shady? That I let them use our house? For gambling? Marcus shook his head. Best case scenario, I go to jail. Worst case, he didn't need to finish. I'd treated enough victims of organized crime to know what happened to people who crossed the wrong families. There has to be a way out, I insisted. There is. Marcus pulled out one final document. Tony made me an offer today. A way to clear the entire debt. I took the paper, reading quickly. Then I read it again, certain I'd misunderstood. This is a medical partnership agreement, I said slowly. Tony's expanding into healthcare. Medical. clinics, treatment centers, rehabilitation facilities. All legitimate businesses that happen to need a medical director with an impeccable reputation. Me. The word came out flat. He wants me to be the medical director for his pill mills and insurance fraud schemes. They're not, don't. I slammed the paper down. I've seen enough overprescription cases to know exactly what this is. He wants to use my medical license to legitimize criminal enterprises. It would clear our debt. All of it. And they'd pay you a salary on top of that. We could keep the house, start over, by destroying everything I've worked for? By betraying every oath I've taken as a physician? It's better than the alternative. Which is? Marcus met my eyes for the first time all evening. They take everything. The house, our accounts, everything. And then? Then they own us anyway. Just without the generous terms. I stood on shaking legs, the full weight of our situation crashing down on me. This wasn't just about money or even our house. This was about my career, my integrity, my entire life being held hostage by my husband's addiction. I need time to think, I said. Tony wants an answer by tomorrow night. Then he'll have to wait. I gathered up some of the documents. I'm taking these to review. Emma, you can't show these to anyone. I'm not stupid, Marcus. I just need to understand what we're dealing with. I left him in his study with his monitors and his shame. In our bedroom, though it was hard to think of it as ours anymore, I locked the door and spread the papers across the bed. Somewhere in this maze of legal documents and criminal agreements, there had to be a way out that didn't involve becoming a criminal myself. My phone buzzed. Sarah, checking in. I let it go to voicemail. Then it buzzed again. This time, an unknown number. Hello? Dr. Chen. The voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of Brooklyn underneath. This is Anthony Castellano. I apologize for calling so late, but I wanted to personally welcome you to our little family gathering earlier. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to properly talk. My blood ran cold. How did you get this number? Your husband has been very forthcoming about many things. I hope we didn't startle you too much this evening. I know it must have been unexpected. What do you want, Mr. Castellano? Please, call me Tony. And what I want is to help you and Marcus through this difficult time. I understand he's explained my proposal. He has. Excellent. I think you'll find it's a very generous offer. Your skills and reputation would be invaluable to our healthcare initiatives. I need time to consider it. Of course. But not too much time, I'm afraid. The current arrangement is becoming untenable for everyone involved. The threat was polite but unmistakable. I understand, I said. I knew you would. You're a smart woman, Dr. Chen. Much smarter than. He paused. Well, let's just say I think you understand the realities of the situation better than some. If that's all, Mr. Castellano, Tony, please. And yes, that's all for now. Have a good evening, Doctor. We'll talk soon. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, then quickly blocked the number. Not that it would matter. People like Tony Castellano didn't let blocked numbers stop them. I was trapped. We were trapped. And tomorrow, I would have to make a choice that would define the rest of my life, become a criminal or lose everything. But as I sat surrounded by evidence of my husband's betrayal, one thought kept circling back: maybe losing everything wasn't the worst option, maybe it was the only way to truly break free. Sleep eluded me entirely. I spent the night poring over the documents, making notes, trying to find some loophole or escape clause. By dawn, I had a legal pad filled with calculations and a growing certainty that Marcus had signed away more than just money, he'd signed away our future. At 6 a.m., I gave up on rest and headed to the kitchen. Marcus was already there, hunched over his laptop at the breakfast table. He looked up with red-rimmed eyes. Did you sleep at all? I asked, starting the coffee maker. Couldn't. He gestured at his screen. I've been trying to find a way to raise capital. Maybe if I could pay down some of the principal. With what money, Marcus? You've already leveraged everything we own. I have some contacts in Hong Kong. There might be opportunities. More gambling. I poured coffee, my hand steady despite my exhaustion. That's your solution? More gambling? It's not gambling if you know what you're doing. I laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet kitchen. You owe $14 million. To organized crime. Clearly, you don't know what you're doing. His face flushed. I don't need your condescension, Emma. And I didn't need my home turned into a mob casino, but here we are. We glared at each other across the kitchen island. 12 years of marriage reduced to this, two strangers bound by debt and recrimination. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Beautiful sunrise this morning, isn't it? I moved to the window. Across the street, a black town car idled at the curb. The tinted window rolled down just enough for me to see a hand wave before rolling back. Up. They're watching us, I said. Marcus joined me at the window. That's just Tony's way. He likes to keep tabs on his investments. We're not investments. We're people. Not to them. I watched the town car pull away, presumably to be replaced by another somewhere less obvious. The message was clear: we were under surveillance. Every move monitored, every decision watched. I'm going to the hospital, I announced. It's Saturday. You're not on the schedule. I have paperwork to catch up on. What I really had was a desperate need to be somewhere that still made sense, where I was Dr. Chen instead of a mob target. Emma, we need to talk about Tony's offer, tonight. I grabbed my keys. We'll talk tonight. The drive to Mount Sinai felt different knowing I might be followed. Every car behind me became suspect, every red light an opportunity for observation. By the time I reached the hospital parking garage, paranoia had set in deep. My office was a sanctuary of diplomas and medical journals, untouched by the chaos of my personal life. I locked the door and pulled out my personal laptop, the one Marcus didn't know about, that I used for my father's estate planning. First, I researched Anthony Castellano. The public records were sparse but telling. Several corporations registered to his name, all with vague descriptions like consulting and investments. A few newspaper mentions from the social pages, charity galas, business openings. Nothing overtly criminal, but the absence of detail was itself suspicious. Next, I researched my options. Asset protection, bankruptcy law, witness protection programs. Each search made my situation seem more hopeless. The documents Marcus had signed were ironclad, written by lawyers who knew exactly how to trap desperate people. A knock interrupted my research. Come in, I called, quickly closing my laptop. Dr. Richard Hawthorne, chief of medicine, entered with his characteristic purposeful stride. Emma, I wasn't expecting you today. Just catching up on some documentation, I said, trying to sound normal. He settled into the chair across from my desk. Actually, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to discuss something with you. My stomach clenched. Had word somehow gotten out about my situation? The Kellerman Foundation is funding a new emergency medicine fellowship, he continued. I'd like you to consider directing it. Under any other circumstances, this would have been a career-defining opportunity. The Kellerman Foundation was legendary in medical circles, their programs launching countless careers. That's wonderful, I managed. When would it start? Fall semester. But I'd need your commitment by Monday. They want to announce it at their gala next week. Monday. 2 days after Tony's deadline. Richard, I'm honored. Can I have the weekend to think about it? Of course. He studied me with the keen eyes that had made him a legendary diagnostician. Emma, is everything all right? You seem distracted. Just tired. The conference was more draining than expected. He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't entirely convinced. Well, take the weekend. But I hope you'll say yes. You'd be perfect for this. After he left, I stared at the fellowship proposal he'd left behind. A year ago, I would have accepted immediately. Now, I might be running an illegal pill mill by Monday. My secure phone, the one I used for sensitive patient communications, rang. Sarah's personal cell. Don't say anything, she said immediately. Just listen. I'm in the cafeteria. Come. Down here. Bring your laptop. I found her in the corner booth we claimed as ours during residency. She had her own laptop open, screens angled away from the security cameras. Sit, she commanded. And tell me everything. Sarah, a man came to my apartment this morning, she interrupted. Well-dressed, expensive car. Said he was a friend of your husband's, wanted to know if you'd seemed upset lately. Gave me this. She slid a business card across the table. Anthony Castellano, Healthcare Investments. I told him I hadn't noticed anything unusual, Sarah continued. But Emma, what the hell is going on? The wall I'd built around my emotions cracked. In hushed tones, I told her everything. Marcus's gambling, the debts, the house being used for illegal games, Tony's offer. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing more horrified with each revelation. Jesus Christ, she whispered when I finished. Emma, you need to go to the police. With what? I'm complicit now. I knew about the gambling in our house and didn't report it. I've seen the financial documents linking us to organized crime. You're a victim, try explaining that to the medical board when they review my license. I pulled up the fellowship offer on my phone. I was just offered the Kellerman directorship. How's that for irony? Sarah grabbed my hands across the table. Listen to me. You are not trapped. There are always options. Name one. Witness protection. FBI. Leave the country if you have to. And abandon my entire life? My career? Better. Then becoming a criminal. She glanced around, then pulled her laptop closer. I did some research after our visitor left. You're Tony Castellano? His family has been linked to healthcare fraud for decades. Fake clinics, Medicare scams, opioid distribution. Anyone who gets in bed with them ends up either in prison or dead. She showed me article after article. Doctors who'd lost their licenses. Clinics shut down by the DEA. A medical director found floating in the Hudson. This was 5 years ago. She said, pointing to one article. Dr. Michael Patterson ran 3 clinics for the Castellano family. When the FBI started investigating, he agreed to testify. They found him before the trial. My hands were shaking. Marcus doesn't know. He can't know it's this bad. Or he does and he doesn't care. Sarah's voice was harsh. Emma, he put you in this position. He chose gambling over your safety. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Dr. Chen? This is Veronica. We met yesterday. I was hoping we could have lunch. Girl talk. I looked at Sarah, who could hear the speakerphone. She shook her head violently. I'm at work, I said. I know. I'm in the lobby. Won't take long, I promise. The line went dead. Sarah was already packing up her laptop. I'm coming with you, she said. No. They've already approached you once. I won't put you in more danger. Emma, please. Just, if something happens, you know the truth. I found Veronica in the main lobby, looking wildly out of place in designer clothes and stilettos among the sick and worried. She smiled when she saw me, all predatory grace. Dr. Chen. You look tired. Late night? What do you want, Veronica? Straight to business. I like that. She linked her arm through mine, steering me toward the doors. Let's walk. Hospitals make me nervous. Outside, she led me to a small park across the street. We sat on a bench. Like 2 friends catching up, except for the town car idling nearby. Tony sent you, I said. Tony's worried about you. We all are. She crossed her legs, designer shoes catching the light. This must be so overwhelming. Poor Marcus never meant for it to go this far. Did you know him before? When he started gambling? Oh, honey, everyone knows Marcus at the clubs. He was quite the player. Still is, actually. Did he tell you about Vegas? Vegas? She laughed. Oops. Maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that. It was just a little trip last month. Boys' weekend. Last month. When he told me he was visiting his mother in Florida. Anyway, Veronica continued, I wanted to talk to you woman to woman. About Tony's offer. I haven't decided yet. Of course not. It's a big decision. She leaned closer, perfume overwhelming. But let me tell you something. Tony's not a patient man. And when he doesn't get what he wants through generosity, he finds other ways. Is that a threat? It's reality. Her smile never wavered. You have such a lovely life, Emma. Beautiful home, prestigious career, reputation. It would be a shame if scandal touched any of that. Scandal? She pulled out her phone, showing me a photo. It was our house, taken from inside. The poker game in full swing, but the angle made it look like I was in the background. Amazing what creative editing can do, she mused. Someone might think you were hosting these games. Participating. Even. That's doctored. I wasn't there. Prove it. She put the phone away. Or better yet, don't put yourself in a position where you need to prove anything. Accept Tony's generous offer, help run a few clinics, make everyone happy. Those clinics will hurt people. Overprescribe opioids, commit insurance fraud, such accusations. Veronica stood, smoothing her dress. Tony's clinics provide valuable services to underserved communities. Any irregularities are just misunderstandings. She handed me a folder I hadn't noticed her carrying. The contract. Tony made some adjustments. Very favorable terms. Sign by tomorrow night, and all your problems disappear. And if I don't? Then Monday morning, some very interesting photos and documents might find their way to the medical board. The FBI. The newspapers. She smiled sweetly. Imagine the headlines. Respected doctor runs gambling ring. Your career would be over. Before lunch. She walked back to the town car, pausing at the door. Oh, and Emma? Your friend Sarah seems lovely. Beautiful daughter, too. Rebecca, right? Starting college next year? The threat was clear. They'd researched not just me, but everyone close to me. I sat on the bench long after the town car disappeared, the folder heavy in my hands. Inside was a contract that would make me medical director of 6 clinics across the tri-state area. The salary was obscene, more than I made at the hospital. All I had to do was sell my soul. Back in my office, I locked the door and called the one person I'd sworn I'd never need again. Emma? My brother David's voice was surprised. It's been what, 2 years? I need your help. David was a corporate lawyer in Boston. We'd been close once, before my marriage to Marcus drove a wedge between us. He'd never liked my husband, never trusted him. Family gatherings became tense, then non-existent. What's wrong? His voice shifted from surprise to concerned. I can't explain over the phone. Can I come see you? Of course. Emma, you're scaring me. I'll take the 4 p.m. train. Meet me at South Station. I'll be there. I spent the next hour transferring files to encrypted drives, backing up everything to cloud storage David couldn't access. If something happened to me, at least the evidence would survive. My hospital pager went off. Emergency department. I wasn't on call, but I went anyway. Anything for a few minutes of normalcy. The ER was Saturday afternoon busy, sports injuries, accidents, the usual chaos. I helped with a trauma case, losing myself in the familiar rhythm. This was who I really was. Not a mob target or a betrayed wife, but a doctor. Someone who helped people, who saved lives. Dr. Chen? One of the residents approached nervously. There's someone asking for you. Says it's urgent. My blood ran cold. Who? Your husband. He's in the waiting room. I found Marcus pacing near the vending machines. He looked worse than this morning, unshaven, clothes wrinkled, eyes wild. What are you doing here? I hissed. You weren't answering your phone. I was worried. He grabbed my arm. Tony called. He knows you're hesitating. Emma, you have to sign that contract. Let go of me. Listen to me. I talked to some people who crossed him. It doesn't end well. One guy, he refused a deal like this. They destroyed his whole family. Business, reputation, everything. And whose fault is it that we're in this position? Mine, okay? It's my fault. But that doesn't change where we are now. His grip tightened. Sign the contract. Please. It's the only way we survive this. Survive? What about my oath as a physician? What about the people those clinics will hurt? What about us? He was almost shouting now, drawing stares. What about our life together? What life? I yanked my arm free. The one where you lied. To me for years? Where you gambled away our future? Where you let criminals into our home? I love you, you love gambling more. Security was approaching, alerted by our raised voices. I stepped back, professional mask sliding into place. You need to leave, I told Marcus. Now. Emma, go home. Or better yet, go to Tony. Tell him he'll have his answer tomorrow night, just like he demanded. Marcus left, shoulders slumped in defeat. Security asked if I was okay. I assured them. I was, even though nothing was okay and might never be again. I had one more shift to cover, then a train to catch. David would know what to do. He had to. Because I was running out of options, and Tony Castellano was running out of patience. The contract in my bag felt heavier with each passing hour. sign it, and betray everything I'd worked for. Refuse, and lose everything anyway. But as I headed back to the ER, one thought crystallized: I'd rather lose everything than become the kind of doctor who hurt people for profit. The question was whether Tony Castellano would give me that choice. The Acela Express to Boston had always been my thinking train. In the past, I'd used these rides to prepare for conferences or decompress after difficult shifts. Now, I clutched an encrypted hard drive containing evidence of my husband's crimes and watched the Connecticut coastline blur past, wondering if I was being followed. David was waiting at South Station, looking every inch the successful corporate lawyer in his weekend casuals that still cost more than most people's formal wear. When he saw me, his composed expression cracked. "Jesus, Em. You look like hell." "Thanks. That's what everyone keeps telling me." I accepted his hug, surprised by how much I'd missed my younger brother. "Come on. Lisa's making dinner, but we can talk in my office first." His Beacon Hill townhouse hadn't changed, still immaculate, still intimidating. Lisa greeted me warmly despite the awkwardness of our long estrangement. She'd always been gracious, even when family tensions ran high. "I'll give you two some privacy," she said, squeezing my hand. "But Emma, whatever it is, we're here for you." David's home office was a fortress of legal books and secure technology. He closed the door, activated what looked like a white noise generator, and sat across from me. "Okay. Tell me everything. And I mean everything." For the second time that day, I laid out the whole sordid story. David's expression grew darker with each revelation. When I showed him the contracts, his lawyer mask slipped entirely. "Holy shit, Emma. This is bad." "I know." "No, you don't." He spread the documents across his desk. "These contracts aren't just legally binding, they're designed to incriminate you. Look at this language here. The moment you sign, you're acknowledging awareness of previous consulting arrangements. That's mob speak for money laundering." "But I haven't signed anything." "Doesn't matter. Your husband signed documents putting your house up as collateral. In some jurisdictions, that makes you a party to the debt." He pulled out a legal pad, making rapid notes. "And these photos Veronica showed you, even if they're fake, they create reasonable doubt about your innocence. So what do I do?" David was quiet for a long moment. "Remember when I told you not to marry Marcus?" "David, I'm not saying I told you so. I'm asking if you remember what I said specifically." I thought back to that ugly confrontation 12 years ago. "You said he was hiding something. That his financial success didn't add up." I did some digging back then. Nothing concrete, just inconsistencies. Stories that didn't match, numbers that seemed inflated. He met my eyes. "I think Marcus has been gambling a lot longer than he's told you." "That's impossible. We've been together, have you?" "Really? How often were you both actually home at the same time? How much did you really know about his daily activities?" The truth of it hit like a physical blow. Our marriage had been built on assumptions and blind trust. I'd been so focused on my career, so grateful to have a partner who understood my demanding schedule, that I'd never questioned the gaps. "Okay, ancient history aside," David continued, "we need to focus on getting you out of this. Option 1, FBI. Turn state's evidence, help them build a case against Castellano." Sarah showed me articles. People who testify against him don't tend to survive until trial. Option 2, run. Tonight. I can get you money, new identification. There are places you could go, and abandon my entire life? My career? Let them win. Better than ending up in prison. Or worse. He pulled up something on his computer. Option 3 is more complicated. We fight back. How? By being smarter than them. Castellano thinks he has you cornered, but he's made mistakes. This contract, for instance. It's so obviously criminal that no legitimate lawyer would have drafted it. That means he's using in-house counsel, probably not licensed in New York. So contracts drafted by unlicensed attorneys can be challenged. It's thin, but it's something. He made more notes. More importantly, Castellano doesn't know you've contacted me. He doesn't know you have copies of everything. That gives us a small advantage. What kind of advantage? David smiled, the shark smile that had made him notorious in corporate litigation. The kind where we turn the tables. But first, I need To know, are you willing to lose everything to destroy them? I'm going to lose everything anyway. Not everything. Just the material things. The house, the money, maybe even your current position. But your medical license, your freedom, your life? Those we can protect. How? By giving them exactly what they want. And then destroying them with it. Over the next 3 hours, David outlined a plan that was equal parts brilliant and terrifying. It required me to play a role, to become someone I wasn't. But then again, I'd been playing the role of happy wife for years without realizing it. The key, David explained, is documentation. Every interaction, every threat, every illegal request needs to be recorded. New York is a one-party consent state, I said, remembering from a malpractice seminar. Exactly. You can legally record any conversation you're part of. He handed me a device that looked like a regular smartphone. This is encrypted, uploads automatically to a secure server. The FBI will eventually need originals, but this protects the evidence. You're assuming I survive long enough to give evidence. Which brings us to insurance. He pulled out another folder. Tomorrow morning, you're going to sign Castellano's contract. What? Hear me out. You'll sign it, but with modifications that seem minor but actually gut the agreement. I'll draft them tonight, tiny changes that a non-lawyer might miss but that fundamentally alter your obligations. They'll catch it. Maybe. But probably not if we're subtle enough. These guys are used to bullying people into submission, not dealing with sophisticated opposition. He paused. There's one more thing. Marcus. What about him? He's the weak link. His gambling addiction makes him unpredictable. Can you continue living with him while we execute this plan? I thought about going back to that contaminated house, sharing space with a man who'd betrayed everything we'd built. Do I have a choice? You could stay here, but that would tip them off. Better to maintain the illusion of normalcy while we build our case. How long? 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Long enough to document their operations, get evidence of the criminal enterprise, then turn everything over to the FBI. And then? Then you disappear for a while. Witness protection if necessary. He saw my expression. I know it's not ideal. But it's better than the alternative. We worked until midnight, David drafting contract modifications while I practiced with the recording equipment. Lisa brought us sandwiches and coffee, her presence a reminder that normal life still existed somewhere. There's something else, David said as I prepared to leave. I've been tracking Marcus's financial history. The gambling goes back at least 15 years. Before you met. That's impossible. I would have known. He showed me printouts, casino reports, suspicious transactions, a pattern of behavior that predated our relationship. He was good at hiding it. And you were busy with residency, then fellowship. Easy to miss the signs. So our entire marriage was built on a lie. I'm sorry, Em. The train ride back to New York felt different. I wasn't running anymore, I was preparing for war. David had given me weapons, knowledge, technology, and most importantly, hope.it was nearly 3 a.m. when I reached Brooklyn. The house was dark except for Marcus's study. I could see the glow of his monitors from the street. Another all-night session chasing the big win that would save us. Inside, I found him passed out at his desk, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scattered papers. The monitors showed trading platforms, online poker sites, sports betting pages. Even now, even with everything at stake, he couldn't stop. I covered him with a blanket, a reflexive gesture of care that I immediately regretted, and went upstairs. In our bedroom, I activated David's recording device and hid the real contracts in a lockbox Marcus didn't know about. Tomorrow, I would begin playing the most dangerous role of my life. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Can't sleep either? Tony Castellano's voice was smooth, almost sympathetic. Big decisions often cause insomnia. How did you know I was awake? Your bedroom light just came on. I like to keep track of my investments. I moved to the window. The street looked empty, but I knew better now. Watching me sleep seems excessive, even for you. I prefer to think of it as protective oversight. You're very important to our future plans, Dr. Chen. I haven't agreed to anything yet. No, but you will. Smart women always make smart choices. He paused. I heard you visited Boston today. Family reunion? My blood chilled. They'd followed me to David's. My brother. We've been estranged. I wanted to reconcile before things change. Family is important. I'm glad you understand that. My family, your family, soon we'll all be connected. Is that what you call it? Connection? I call it mutual benefit. You help us, we help you. Everyone prospers. And if I don't see it that way? Then you'd be making a mistake. But I don't think you're the type to make mistakes, doctor. Not when so much is at stake. The threat was velvet covered but unmistakable. I'll have an answer tomorrow. I know you will. Sleep well, Dr. Chen. Tomorrow begins a beautiful partnership. The line went dead. I stood at the window, knowing I was being watched, and slowly drew the curtains. Let them think I was cowed, frightened, beaten. Let them believe they'd in 12 hours, I would sign their contract and begin my descent into their world. But I wouldn't be going alone. Every word would be recorded, every crime documented. David had shown me that sometimes the only way to escape a trap was to spring it yourself. I thought about the Hippocratic oath I'd taken years ago. First, do no harm. Tomorrow, I would seemingly break that oath by agreeing to run criminal clinics. But the greater harm would be letting Castellano continue unchecked, creating more victims like Marcus, like me, like all the patients who would suffer under his healthcare empire. Marcus stirred in his study below, probably dreaming of jackpots and lucky breaks. He had no idea that his wife was about to gamble everything on a different kind of game, one where the stakes weren't money but justice. I set 3 alarms and finally tried to sleep. Tomorrow would require the performance of my life. I had to be convincing as the defeated wife, the reluctant conspirator, the doctor willing to sell her soul for financial security. But underneath, I would be something else entirely, a weapon aimed at the heart of Castellano's operation. David had given me the tools. Sarah had shown me the stakes. Even Marcus, in his weakness, had revealed the human cost of Castellano's predatory empire. The house creaked around me, full of ghosts, not just the strangers who'd invaded our space, but the shadows of who Marcus and I used to be. That couple was gone, destroyed by addiction and lies. What emerged from those ashes remained to be seen. But one thing was certain, Anthony Castellano had made a crucial mistake. He'd threatened the wrong doctor. And tomorrow, I would begin to show him exactly how costly that mistake would be. The burner phone David had given me buzzed with a text, "Everything's ready. Remember, document everything. Trust no one. Stay safe." I deleted the message and closed my eyes. In the darkness, I could almost pretend this was just another night, that tomorrow would be just another day. But pretense was a luxury I could no longer afford. The real Dr. Emma Chen, not the defeated wife or the compliant victim, was about to enter the game. And unlike my husband, I knew exactly when to hold, when to fold, and when to go all in. Tomorrow, I would sign my name to a criminal conspiracy. But with every signature, every recorded conversation, every documented crime, I would be building something else, evidence that would bring down an empire. Let them think they'd won. The best operations were always the ones where the patient didn't feel the scalpel until it was too late. Sunday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. I woke to find Marcus already dressed, pacing our bedroom like a caged animal. "You're up early," I said, checking that my recording device was active. "Couldn't sleep. Today's the day, right? You're going to sign?" I studied him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. "Do I have a choice? Emma, I know you hate me right now. But this is our only way out. Once you're working with Tony, we can stabilize, maybe even stop." I held up a hand. "Don't pretend this is some kind of fresh start. I'm signing to save our lives, not our marriage." He flinched but nodded. "Tony wants us at his office at noon. Both of us." "His office?" "Downtown. Castellano Enterprises." He attempted a weak smile. "At least it's a legitimate building." I spent the morning following David's instructions. The modified contract was hidden in my purse, looking identical to the original except for 5 crucial word changes that would legally protect me when everything imploded. I'd memorized the locations, practiced switching the documents dozens of times. At 11:30, we drove in silence to a gleaming office tower in the financial district. Castellano Enterprises occupied the top 3 floors, a testament to how successfully crime paid when dressed in corporate clothing. The elevator ride felt eternal. Marcus fidgeted with his tie, checking his phone obsessively. I stood perfectly still, running through my plan one final time. Remember, Marcus whispered as we reached the top floor, be respectful. These people, I know exactly who these people are, I cut him off. The reception area was all marble and modern art, designed to impress and intimidate. A beautiful woman who could have been Veronica's sister directed us to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Tony Castellano entered like a king greeting subjects, flanked by two men who were clearly not lawyers despite their suits. Veronica followed, today playing the role of professional in a severe black dress. Dr. Chen. Marcus. Tony's smile was warm, paternal almost. So glad you could make it. Please, sit. The conference table was glass, nowhere to hide anything. I'd have to be perfect in my execution. Before we begin, Tony said, settling into his chair, I want to assure you that this partnership will be beneficial for everyone. Your medical expertise, combined with our business infrastructure, will revolutionize healthcare in underserved communities. By overprescribing opioids? I kept my voice neutral, curious rather than accusatory. By providing pain management solutions to people who desperately need them, he corrected smoothly. The regulatory environment is overly restrictive. We simply help patients get the care they deserve. One of his men placed the contract in front of me. 30 pages of legal language designed to trap me into complicity. I made a show of reading it carefully, asking questions that painted me as reluctantly practical rather than morally opposed. The salary is generous, I noted. We value expertise, Tony replied. And loyalty. What exactly would my duties entail? Initially? Reviewing patient files, signing off on treatment plans. Nothing you haven't done before. As trust builds, perhaps you'd take a more active role. In clinic operations. And if regulatory agencies investigate? Tony's smile sharpened. We have excellent lawyers. But investigations are rare when clinics are run by respected physicians with impeccable reputations. I nodded slowly, then reached for my purse. I need my reading glasses. The switch took 3 seconds. David had made me practice until I could do it without looking. The modified contract came out looking identical to the original. Where do I sign? Tony leaned forward, eager. Page 12, 23, and 30. Initial each page. I signed my name with steady hands, knowing that the modifications David had inserted would make the contract unenforceable. Small changes, will became may, required became requested, binding became suggested. Tiny alterations. That transformed obligations into options. Excellent. Tony stood, extending his hand. Welcome to the family, Dr. Chen. I shook his hand, noting the camera in the corner recording our deal. Good. Let them document their own crimes. Now, Tony continued, let's discuss your first assignment. We have a clinic in Queens that needs immediate attention. Some unfortunate scrutiny from local authorities. What kind of scrutiny? Nothing serious. A few complaints about prescription practices. Having someone of your caliber reviewing their protocols would go a long way toward reassuring everyone. Veronica slid a folder across the table. Inside were patient files, dozens of them, all showing the same pattern. Young men. With vague pain complaints receiving enormous quantities of oxycodone. These dosages are lethal, I said, not having to fake my shock. That's why we need your expertise, Tony said smoothly. To ensure patient safety while meeting their legitimate needs. I flipped through more files, my recording device capturing everything. This patient, 22 years old, prescribed 180 pills of 80 mg oxycodone for chronic back pain. That's a terminal cancer dosage. Perhaps the previous medical director was overzealous, Tony conceded. Your job would be to find the right balance. My job, I said carefully, would be to ensure medical standards are met. Of course. We're not asking you to do anything. That would compromise your ethics. His tone suggested otherwise. Just be flexible in your interpretations. Marcus had been silent throughout, but now he spoke up. Emma understands the situation. She'll do what's necessary. I shot him a look that could have stripped paint. I'll do what's medically appropriate. Of course, Tony said again, but his eyes had hardened slightly. Veronica will take you to the Queen's Clinic tomorrow. 8 a.m. sharp. Get familiar with the operation, meet the staff, review the files. And if I find issues? Then you fix them. That's why we're paying you so generously. He stood, signaling the meeting's end. Oh, and Dr. Chen? Your husband's debt is now frozen. No more interest accumulation. Consider it a signing bonus. As we left, Veronica pulled me aside. A word of advice? Don't overthink things. The patients at these clinics aren't like your hospital people. They know what they want, and we give it to them. Simple business. Medicine isn't business. Everything's business, honey. You'll learn. The drive home was tense. Marcus kept glancing at me, trying to gauge my mood. You did good in there, he finally said. Tony was impressed. Impressed that I agreed to become a drug dealer? That's not, he stopped, sighing. Look, I know this isn't ideal. But once we're clear of the debt, we can distance ourselves. You really believe that? You think people like Tony just let you walk away? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Back home, I immediately uploaded the recording to David's secure server. The evidence was damning, Tony explicitly discussing prescription fraud, showing me falsified patient files, making it clear my role was to legitimize their operation. I was reviewing the files when my hospital phone rang. Sarah. We need to talk, she said without preamble. Not over the phone. The coffee shop on 78th in an hour. I found her in the back corner, laptop open, looking grim. I did more research, she said quietly. That clinic in Queens? 3 overdose deaths. In the last 6 months. All young men who received scripts from there. Jesus. It gets worse. She showed me news articles, police reports, obituaries. Every clinic Castellano operates has a body count. They're not just dealing pills, they're creating addicts, then supplying them until they die. I thought about the files Tony had shown me. Those weren't patients, they were victims. I signed the contract, I admitted. Sarah's face went white. Emma, no, listen. I explained David's plan, the modifications, the recordings. As I talked, her expression shifted from horror to something like hope. Your brother's either a genius or insane, she said finally. Probably both. But it's the only way to get evidence from inside. And tomorrow you start at the murder clinic. Tomorrow I start documenting everything. I pulled out the burner phone. Every prescription, every patient, every violation. David's connecting me with FBI contacts who specialize in healthcare fraud. What about Marcus? What about him? Can you trust him not to reveal what you're doing? I laughed bitterly. I can't trust him with anything. He doesn't know about the real plan. As far as he's concerned, I've surrendered. Sarah reached across the table, gripping my hand. This is dangerous, Em. These people don't just fire employees who disappoint them. I know. But what's the alternative? Let them keep killing people. Let someone else stop them. I'm the one with access now. I'm the one who can get the evidence. I squeezed her hand back. Besides, they made it personal when they invaded my home. We spent another hour going over safety protocols. Sarah insisted on being my check-in contact. If I didn't text her every 4 hours, she'd alert David and the FBI. It wasn't much protection, but it was something. That evening, I found Marcus in his study, staring at his monitors. For once, they weren't showing gambling sites. I closed them all, he said without turning around. The accounts, the apps, everything. Deleted them. Why? Because you signed that contract to save me. Least I can do is try to deserve it. I wanted to tell him it was too little, too late. That I'd signed the contract to destroy the people he'd brought into our lives, not to save a marriage that was already dead. But maintaining my cover meant keeping him in the dark. It's a start, I said instead. He turned, and I saw tears on his face. I know I've destroyed everything. Our life, your career, us. But maybe, don't. I cut him off. Just don't. Focus on staying clean. One day at a time. The rest, we'll see. I left him there and retreated to our bedroom. Tomorrow would begin my descent into Castellano's world. I'd walk into that clinic knowing it was a death trap for desperate people. I'd review files documenting medical murder. I'd pretend to cooperate while building a case that would hopefully shut it all down. My phone buzzed. Tony again. Reviewing the files I gave you, he asked. Yes. There's a lot to process. I'm sure. Just remember, flexibility is key. These patients have needs that don't always align with textbook medicine. I understand. I knew you would. You're practical, like me. We do what we must to survive and thrive. Speaking of which, I said carefully, I'll need access to all clinic records, financial and medical, to properly assess operations. There was a pause. That's quite comprehensive. You're paying for my expertise. Let me apply it fully. Fair point. I'll arrange access. But Dr. Chen? That information is sensitive. I trust you understand the importance of discretion. Of course. Excellent. Sleep well. Tomorrow begins your new career. After he hung up, I made notes of everything. The conversation, the implied threats, the promise of access to financial records. David would be pleased. Financial crimes were often easier to prosecute than medical ones. I thought about the young men in those files, prescribed enough opioids to kill elephants. Tomorrow I'd walk among their dealers, pretend to be one of them. The thought made me physically ill, but somewhere in Queens, another young man was probably getting his first prescription, starting down a path that ended in an obituary. If my deception could save even one life, it would be worth it. Marcus knocked on the bedroom door. Can I come in? It's your room too, I said, though it didn't feel true anymore. He sat on his side of the bed, maintaining distance. I know you'll never forgive me. I don't forgive myself. But I want you to know, I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. There is no making this right, Marcus. There's only surviving it. Then help me understand how to help you survive. I looked at this man I'd once loved, now a stranger wearing familiar features. Stay out of my way. Don't gamble. Don't contact Tony unless absolutely necessary. And whatever you do, don't tell anyone that I'm anything less than fully committed to this arrangement. You're planning something. It wasn't a question. I'm planning to survive. That's all you need to know. He nodded slowly. Be careful, Em. These people, they don't give second chances. Neither do I replied. Tony's demeanor shifted, the paternal mask slipping. What are you doing, doctor? What you hired me to do. Medical oversight. I hired you to provide legitimacy, not obstruction. Then you hired the wrong doctor. The room went very quiet. Marcus shifted nervously beside me. The two unknown men moved slightly, positioning themselves between us and the door. Perhaps, Tony said slowly, I wasn't clear about expectations. Our clinics serve a specific clientele with specific needs. Your job is to ensure those needs are met within flexible medical parameters. My job is to do no harm. Your job, his voice hardened, is whatever I say it is. You signed a contract. I signed a contract to provide medical services, not to commit murder with a prescription pad. Tony set down his glass carefully. Murder is such an ugly word. We prefer to think of it as pain management for the terminally addicted. Addiction is treatable. Death isn't. You sound like the last medical director. He had similar qualms. Tony's smile was razor sharp. Have you ever been deep-sea fishing, Dr. Chen? Amazing how quickly things disappear in the ocean. Marcus grabbed my arm. Emma, shut up, Marcus. Tony's mask dropped completely. Your wife seems to have forgotten her situation. Perhaps you should remind her. She knows, Marcus said quickly. She's just adjusting. Give her time. Time is expensive. Every patient she turns away costs money. Every prescription she refuses loses revenue. Tony stood, moving to the window. I'll give you one more day to adjust your attitude. Tomorrow, you'll see a minimum of 40 patients. You'll fill their prescriptions. You'll stop playing DEA agent. And if I don't? He turned, and his expression made my blood freeze. Then we'll discuss your husband's debt and more, immediate terms. Did Marcus mention the interest resumed the moment you violated our agreement? I haven't violated anything. You've cost me $20,000 today in lost revenue. That's a violation. He nodded to his men. Show them out. Dr. Chen, I trust tomorrow will be more productive. The elevator ride down was silent until we reached the parking garage. Then Marcus exploded. What are you doing? You can't fight these people. Watch me. Emma, you don't understand. Tony was being nice up there. When he stops being nice, people like those patients in his clinics. I got in the car. Drive. We're being watched. Halfway home, I noticed the same black SUV had been behind us since leaving Manhattan. We have a tail. I know. They want us to know. Marcus's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Emma, please. Just do what they want. We can get through this. By becoming murderers. By surviving. My phone buzzed. David, status? I texted back, escalating. May need extraction soon. His response was immediate, 48 more hours. FBI needs more evidence, 48 hours. In that time, how many patients would get lethal prescriptions? How many young men would take their last dose? There's something else, Marcus said as we pulled into our street. Tony mentioned your father's inheritance. He knows exactly how much you have. Let him know. It doesn't matter. It matters if he decides to take it. He can. Do whatever he wants, Emma. He owns judges, police, politicians. The law is what he says it is. We sat in our driveway, engine off, both recognizing that entering the house meant returning to our contaminated life. I'm sorry, Marcus said quietly. For all of this. For bringing these monsters into our life. For being too weak to fight my addiction. For destroying us. Apologies don't fix anything. I know. But I need you to know, if something happens to you because of my mistakes, I'll never forgive myself. Then help me. You know Tony's operation. Help me take him down. Marcus looked at me with something like wonder. You're really going to do it. You're going to try to destroy him. I'm going to succeed. He'll kill you. Maybe. But the evidence will survive. David has everything, recordings, documents, patient files. Even if Tony kills me, he's going down. We went inside to find the house had been searched. Nothing obvious, just subtle signs. Drawers slightly out of alignment, books moved on shelves, the medicine cabinet reorganized. They're sending a message, Marcus said unnecessarily. I activated my recording device and called Tony. Did you lose something in my house? I asked when he answered. Just ensuring our new partner doesn't have any surprises hidden away. You understand, trust but verify. Find anything interesting? Nothing unexpected. Sleep well, doctor. Tomorrow's a big day. 40 patients, remember. After he hung up, I went to my hiding spot. The real contract was still there, along with the encrypted drives. They'd been thorough but not thorough enough. Kelly texted from a burner number, heard about your meeting. Be careful tomorrow. Dimitri's angry. I spent the night preparing. David had sent extraction protocols, code words, safe houses, emergency contacts. The FBI was building their case but needed me to stay in place a little longer. Marcus found me at 3 a.m., organizing medical supplies into a go bag. Planning to run? Planning for contingencies. He sat across from me, looking older than his years. I've been thinking about those young men at the clinic. They're me, aren't they? Different addiction, same destruction. Addiction is a disease. What Tony does is exploitation. I exploited you. Used your trust, your love, your stability to fund my disease. I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in days. Yes, you did. Would you believe me if I said I want to help stop him? Not for us, I know we're over. But for those kids. For some kind of redemption. What could you do? I know where he keeps his real books. The ones showing where the pill money goes, which officials he pays off, which judges are in his pocket. My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. Where? His boat. A yacht docked in Jersey. He thinks it's secure because it's mobile, international waters and all that. Could you get them? Maybe. I still have some access from when I was deeper in his circle. He met my ice. But if I do this and get caught, you're dead. Worth it, maybe. To stop being the man who destroyed everything he touched. I wanted to trust him. But trusting Marcus had led me here in the first place. Sleep on it, I said finally. If you're serious, we'll talk tomorrow. He stood to leave, pausing at the door. Emma? I know you'll never forgive me. But maybe helping you stop Tony is how I start forgiving myself. After he left, I texted David about the yacht and the books. His response was immediate despite the hour, game changer if true. Verifying. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky the color of blood. In 5 hours, I'd return to the clinic. Tony expected me to become his accomplice, to sign death certificates. Disguised as prescriptions, instead, I'd continue gathering evidence while walking a tightrope between defiance and compliance. Too much resistance and I'd end up in the ocean. Too much cooperation and I'd become the very monster I was trying to stop, but something had shifted. Marcus's offer, Kelly's courage, even Petrov's fear, they were all cracks in Tony's empire. And as any doctor knows, the smallest fracture can bring down the strongest structure if you know where to apply pressure. Tomorrow would bring 40 patients expecting their fix. I'd have to find a way to help them without feeding their addiction. Document Tony's crimes without getting caught, and stay alive long enough for the FBI to move. The recording device blinked steadily, capturing everything. In 48 hours, this would all be over one way or another. I just had to survive until then. The next morning, I arrived at the clinic to find Dimitri waiting with 2 armed men. Insurance, he said simply. To ensure today goes smoothly. I saw 43 patients that day. For each one, I conducted real examinations while the guards watched. When patients genuinely needed pain management, I prescribed appropriate doses. When they were clearly drug-seeking, I documented everything but wrote prescriptions for non-narcotic alternatives. Every interaction was recorded. By noon, Tony was calling every hour. I didn't answer. At 2 p.m., Kelly slipped me a note. FBI is here. Silver Honda across street. My handler had arrived early. Something was happening. At 3 p.m., Marcus texted, got them. Everything. Meeting David now. At 4 p.m., Dimitri grabbed my arm. Mr. Castellano wants you. Now. I have patience, now. The ride to Manhattan was silent except for my racing heart. This was it. Either Tony had discovered my deception or Marcus had been caught. Either way, my cover was blown, but when we arrived at Tony's office, I found chaos. FBI agents were everywhere, boxes of documents being carried out, computers tagged as evidence. Tony sat in handcuffs at his own conference table, Veronica beside him. Agent Sarah Kim approached me. Dr. Chen? We've been expecting you. Your brother and husband are in protective custody. The books from the yacht gave us everything, financial records going back 15 years, names of every corrupt official, evidence of money laundering, drug trafficking, and murder. The clinics? Being raided as we speak. Dr. Petrov is cooperating. Fully in exchange for immunity. Tony looked at me with pure hatred. You clever bitch. The contract modifications, that was you, wasn't it? I said nothing, but my silence was answer enough. Your husband's a dead man, he snarled as agents led him away. You both are. This isn't over. Agent Kim touched my arm. It is for him. With the evidence you gathered and the books Marcus provided, he's looking at life without parole. The entire organization is coming down. He left for the guest room, a new arrangement that felt appropriate. I lay in our bed, now mine alone, and thought about tomorrow. In 12 hours, I'd walk into a clinic that dealt death dressed as healthcare. I'd shake hands with murderers. And smile at their jokes. I'd begin the performance that would either save lives or end mine, but I was Dr. Emma Chen. I'd survived 36-hour shifts, violent patients, and a healthcare system that tried to break idealistic doctors daily. I'd survived a marriage built on lies and a husband who'd gambled away our future. I could survive this too. More importantly, I could document it, expose it, and maybe, just maybe, shut it down. The recording device sat on my nightstand, ready for tomorrow's performance. In the morning, I'd put on my white coat and step into hell, but I wouldn't be going as a victim. I'd be going as a weapon, armed with technology and righteous fury. Tony Castellano thought he'd recruited another corrupt doctor. Instead, he'd invited in his own destruction. The irony was delicious. Marcus had gambled our lives away chasing the big win. Now it was my turn to gamble, not with cards or dice, but with justice, and unlike my husband, I knew exactly when to go all in. The Queen's Clinic squatted on a corner like a predator waiting for prey. From the outside, it looked legitimate enough: clean storefront, professional signage reading, Compassionate Care Medical Center, even a small parking lot. But the line of people waiting outside at 7:45 a.m. told a different story. Young men. Mostly, shifting restlessly, eyes darting, the unmistakable signs of chemical dependency. Veronica met me at the employee entrance, dressed in medical scrubs that seemed like a costume on her. Dr. Chen. Ready for your first day? As ready as one can be, I replied, ensuring my recording device was active. The staff's excited to meet you. Well, nervous might be more accurate. The last medical director was let go rather suddenly. What happened? He developed a conscience. She laughed as if this was hilarious. Started refusing scripts, talking about ethics. Can you imagine? Inside, the clinic was a study in contrasts. The waiting room was packed despite the early hour, but the medical areas were eerily quiet. Too few staff for too many patients, a red flag in any legitimate practice. This is our office manager, Dimitri. Veronica introduced a large man who looked more like security than administration. He handles the practical aspects of operations. Dimitri's handshake could have crushed stone. Dr. Chen. We've heard good things. Mr. Castellano says you're a team player. I'm here to practice medicine, I said carefully. Of course. This way to your office. The medical director's office was larger than my hospital space, with leather furniture and a view of the parking lot. The desk was clean except for a computer and a stack of prescriptions already filled out, waiting only for signatures. Previous director liked to pre-sign, Dimitri explained, noting my attention. Save time. That's illegal, I said mildly. Prescriptions must be written after patient examination. Dimitri and Veronica exchanged glances. Of course, Dimitri said. We'll adjust our procedures. I spent the first hour reviewing patient files on the computer system. What I found was a masterclass in medical fraud. Patients with multiple prescriptions. For the same medications from different providers. Diagnoses that didn't match symptoms. Treatment plans that were carbon copies regardless of condition. Dr. Chen? A nervous young woman in scrubs appeared at my door. I'm Kelly, one of the nurses. The patients are getting restless. How many are scheduled today? About 80. 80? I couldn't hide my shock. How many providers? Just you and Dr. Petrov. He only sees special patients. I followed Kelly to the exam area, passing rooms that looked more like processing stations than medical facilities. Bare minimum equipment, no privacy, assembly line medicine at its worst. Let's start with proper examinations, I told Kelly. Full vital signs, medical histories, the works. But that'll take as long as it takes. We're doctors, not dealers. The morning became a battle between my medical ethics and the clinic's expectations. The first patient, a 20-year-old who gave his name as just Mike, presented with a crumpled prescription request for 120 oxycodone tablets. My back hurts, he said, not meeting my eyes. When did the pain start? I began a proper examination. I don't know. Years ago. Look, my regular doctor just writes the script. I'm not your regular doctor. Let's do this properly. By the time I'd completed a full examination, documented actual symptoms, and written a prescription for physical therapy and non-narcotic pain management, Dimitri was hovering outside my door. We have a problem, he said once Mike left, furious. About not getting his opioids. You're taking too long. Patients are complaining. Good medicine takes time. This isn't a hospital, doctor. These people come here for specific services, which I'll provide within medical guidelines. His face darkened. Mr. Castellano won't be pleased. Then Mr. Castellano can discuss it with me directly. The morning continued in the same vein. I saw 12 patients properly, turning away 8 who were clearly drug-seeking without legitimate medical needs. Each rejection was met with anger, threats, sometimes tears. The weight of their addiction was heartbreaking, but feeding it would be murder. At lunch, I locked my office door and called David. How's your first day in hell? He asked without preamble. Educational. I've documented massive fraud, prescription mills, and what amounts to organized drug dealing with medical licenses. Good. Keep recording everything. FBI says they need at least a week of evidence before moving. A week? David, people are dying here. I know. But if they move too fast, Castellano's lawyers will get everyone off on technicalities. We need ironclad evidence. There's another doctor here. Petrov. He sees special patients. Find out more. The bigger the network we can expose, the better. After lunch, I encountered Dr. Petrov, a thin, nervous man who reeked of cigarettes and fear. You're making waves, he said, cornering me in the supply room. That's dangerous here. I'm practicing medicine. No, you're committing suicide. He glanced around nervously. You know what happened to the last medical director who grew a conscience? Veronica said he was let go. Let go off the Verrazano Bridge, maybe. His body was never found. Petrov's hands shook as he lit another cigarette, ignoring the no-smoking signs. These people don't terminate employment, they terminate employees. Then why do you stay? Same reason you're here. Debt. Mine's not financial, they have other things on me. Just be smart. Sign the scripts, take the money, stay alive. What kind of things do they have on you? He laughed bitterly. The kind that end medical careers and start prison sentences. We're all compromised here, doctor. That's how they like it. The afternoon brought more of the same, desperate addicts seeking fixes, my refusal to provide them, and growing tension with the staff. By 3 p.m., Dmitri had called Tony twice, speaking in hushed Russian. Mr. Castellano wants to see you, he announced. Tonight. His office, 7 p.m. I'll be there. At 4 p.m., Kelly approached me quietly. Can I talk to you? Privately? In my office with the door closed, she broke down crying. I became a nurse to help people. This place, it's killing them. That young man last month, Tommy? He got his prescription. Here the day before he overdosed. He was only 19. Why don't you quit? They don't let people quit. They find things to hold over you. With me, it's my brother. He owes them money. If I leave. She didn't need to finish. What if I told you things might change soon? She looked at me with a mixture of hope and fear. Don't make promises you can't keep. And don't trust anyone here. Especially Petrov, he reports everything to Dmitri. I spent the remaining hour documenting everything, the patient files, the pre-signed prescriptions, the conversation with Petrov. The evidence was damning, but David was right. We needed more to ensure convictions. Marcus was waiting in his car when I left. Thought you might want backup for tonight. This isn't your fight anymore. Everything involving Tony is my fight. I brought him into our lives. The drive to Manhattan was quiet until Marcus spoke again. How bad is it? The clinic? It's a murder factory with medical degrees. And you're going to shut it down. Again, not a question. Someone has to. Emma, I know I have no right to say this, but I'm proud of you. And terrified for you. Tony's office at night was even more intimidating than during the day. The city lights created shadows that seemed to move, and the security presence had doubled. We were escorted to his private office where Tony waited with Veronica and two men I didn't recognize. Dr. Chen. I heard you had an interesting first day. I practiced medicine. I understand that's unusual for your clinics. His smile tightened. Dmitri says you saw 12 patients in 5 hours. At that rate, we'd go bankrupt. At the previous rate, patients go to the morgue. Such dramatic language. He poured himself whiskey from a crystal decanter. Our patients are adults making informed choices about pain management. Your patients are addicts being supplied with lethal doses of narcotics. That's a very narrow interpretation, it's a medical fact. I pulled out my phone, showing him photos I'd taken of patient files. This prescription would kill a horse. This one violates every CDC guideline. This patient has been getting the same script for 3 years without a single follow-up exam. 6 months later, I sat in a small cafe in Portland, Oregon, watching the rain fall. My phone, a new one under a new name, buzzed with a text from David. Castellano convicted on all counts. 347 years. The others got similar sentences. You're safe to come home. Home. The brownstone had been sold to pay legal fees and restitution. My position at Mount Sinai was gone, even though I'd helped bring down a criminal empire. The medical board couldn't overlook my temporary participation in the clinics, but I was alive, free, and practicing medicine again at a small community clinic that served real patients with real needs. Marcus and I had divorced quietly during the trial. He'd entered treatment, finally facing his addiction. His testimony had been crucial in convicting Tony, an act of courage that didn't erase his betrayals but showed the man he might have been. Sarah visited monthly, bringing updates from New York and reminders that I'd saved lives. The FBI estimated Tony's operation had killed over 200 people through overdoses. That number would have kept growing without our intervention, Kelly wrote to say she was in nursing school, her brother free from debt, her life reclaimed. Even Dr. Petrov had found redemption of sorts, working with the DEA to identify and shut down other pill mills. My new apartment was small, nothing like the brownstone. But it was clean, honest, mine. No hidden gambling debts, no strangers in my living room, no contracts with devils. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I hadn't come home early from that conference. Would I have lived in ignorant bliss while Tony's empire grew? Would Marcus have eventually been found in the Hudson? Would those young men have kept dying, one prescription at a time? But I had come home early. I had found my house full of strangers. And in the end, that contamination had led to a different kind of cleansing, one that saved lives, destroyed a criminal empire, and taught me that sometimes the greatest act of medicine is refusing to do harm, no matter the cost. My new name was Dr. Emily Clark. But I was still Emma Chen where it mattered, in my dedication to healing, my refusal to compromise my ethics, and my hard-won understanding that home isn't a building or a marriage or a life built on lies. Home is the peace that comes from knowing you faced evil and chose to fight, even when running would have been easier. The rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean. I had patience to see tomorrow. Real patience, real medicine, real life. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.